It was supposed to be just another regular meeting at the office, long, routine, and easily forgettable. The kind where everyone rushes to share updates, pretend to take notes, and then leave as quickly as possible. But that day, something felt slightly off. The air felt heavier, and even the usual jokes during the wrap-up didn't land the same way. I noticed Emily, my coworker, lingering a little longer than usual, her eyes flicking toward me during the meeting, her smile just a second too long. I brushed it off at first. After all, we were just coworkers, nothing more. Or at least, that's what I thought. Emily had always been friendly, maybe even a bit too friendly at times, but I never gave it much thought. We sat across from each other for months, shared casual conversations during coffee breaks, and even worked late a few times on tight deadlines. But it was always professional. She had her own life, I had mine. So when the meeting ended and everyone began heading out, I was ready to do the same. That's when she said it, "Hey, can you stay back for a few minutes? I need your thoughts on something." It sounded innocent enough. I didn't hesitate. I shut my laptop, sat back down, and waited for her to speak. The room quickly emptied out, and within a couple of minutes, it was just the two of us. That silence, it was loud. She closed the conference room door gently, as if she didn't want anyone to notice. That's when my pulse picked up. Not because I was scared, just confused. Curious. I asked her what was up, expecting maybe a question about the project or a suggestion for a presentation. But instead of talking about work, she started with something completely different. She leaned forward slightly and said, "I've been meaning to talk to you for a while, but I wasn't sure how to bring it up." Her voice was low, almost nervous, and her fingers kept fidgeting with the edge of her notebook. I smiled politely, still thinking this was just going to be some awkward feedback or event session about the boss. But what she said next changed everything. From that moment, the energy in the room shifted. What started as a normal after-meeting chat slowly turned into something deeper, more personal, something we both weren't expecting. She opened up about things I never thought she'd share, and the way she looked at me made it clear this wasn't just about work. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to leave, to avoid whatever was about to happen. But another part of me stayed frozen, listening, wondering how we got here and what would come next. And just when I thought it couldn't get any more intense, she stood up, walked toward the blinds, and pulled them shut. That's when I realized, this wasn't going to be a normal conversation at all. What happened after that changed everything, for both of us. And it didn't stay a secret for long. The moment she closed the blinds, my heart started racing. Not because anything had happened yet, but because I couldn't read what was about to. Emily wasn't smiling anymore. Her expression was serious, thoughtful, like she was working something out in her head before saying it aloud. I shifted in my seat, trying to stay calm, but my mind was spinning. This was someone I worked with almost every day. We shared emails, task lists, meetings, even small office jokes. But now, all of that felt like a setup for something much more complicated. She finally spoke, her voice lower than before. "I know this is unexpected," she said, "but I can't pretend like everything's normal anymore." My throat went dry. I didn't even know what she was referring to yet, but something told me this wasn't a random moment. Maybe it had been building up for weeks, maybe months, and I'd been too caught up in deadlines to notice. I searched her face for clues, but she avoided eye contact, instead fixing her gaze on the table between us. I tried to steer things back to safe ground. "If this is about work," I started, but she cut me off gently. "It's not about work," she said, almost in a whisper. "It's about us. Or at least, what's been happening between us lately." That's when it hit me, every long conversation, every time she laughed at my worst jokes, every late-night message that seemed a little too personal. They weren't random. But was it all one-sided? Had I unknowingly led her on? Or was there something between us I never allowed myself to see clearly? I didn't know what to say. And before I could even figure out how to respond, she stepped closer, and that's when things started to spiral. She stepped closer, and I instinctively leaned back in my chair. Not because I was scared, but because everything felt too sudden, too blurry. "I know I'm crossing a line," she said quietly, "but I had to be honest. I've been carrying this for too long." Her voice cracked slightly, like she wasn't sure if she should keep going. I looked at her, trying to process it all. In any other place, any other moment, this could have just been a conversation between two people figuring things out. But here, in this office, after hours, it felt like a ticking time bomb. I glanced at the closed door, wondering what someone might think if they walked in right now. The company had strict boundaries. HR didn't take office relationships lightly, especially ones that could create awkwardness or raise questions about professionalism. And Emily, she wasn't just any coworker. She was on my team. She reported to the same manager. Anything between us could easily turn into a messy rumor, or worse, a scandal. But it wasn't just about the office policies. There was something deeper happening here. The way she spoke, the emotion in her words, it wasn't just a crush. She had real feelings. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I had ignored mine for the sake of keeping things simple. Just then, her phone buzzed on the table. She looked at the screen and quickly silenced it, but I caught a glimpse of the name, Jordan. A name I didn't recognize, but her reaction to it was enough to spark a dozen questions. Was she already involved with someone? Was I unknowingly in the middle of something I didn't understand? Before I could ask, she looked at me again, her eyes searching for an answer I still didn't have. And in that heavy silence, everything changed again. The silence between us was thick now, like we were both trapped in a moment that had gone way past the point of return. Emily took a slow breath, as if trying to gather herself, but her eyes kept darting to her phone, even though she never picked it up again. That name, Jordan, kept echoing in my head. I didn't know who he was, but the way she'd quickly turned the screen down said everything. Something was being hidden. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I even knew who I was sitting across from anymore. "I didn't plan for this," she said finally, her voice lower, almost shaky. "But when you're around someone every day, sometimes feelings just happen." She gave me a look that held both regret and longing. "But it's complicated. More than you know." I wanted to ask her outright, who was Jordan? But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she was looking at me, like she needed me to understand before judging her. Or maybe I was afraid of the answer. Still, the air between us had shifted. This wasn't just about a secret office connection anymore. It was something bigger, messier, layered with things neither of us had said out loud. Outside the conference room, I could hear a few late-working colleagues walking past, their voices distant. We were still in a public space, still in our professional world, but it felt like we were standing on the edge of something private and risky. If even one person walked in right now, everything would come crashing down. Careers. Reputations. Trust. Emily took one more step forward, close enough now that I could hear the nervousness in her breath. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, just above a whisper. And then the door handle turned. The door handle turned slowly, and both of us froze. I could hear footsteps just outside, and in that split second, my mind raced through 1,000 outcomes. If someone walked in now, seeing us alone in a closed room, blinds shut, it wouldn't matter what we were actually doing. The office gossip machine would twist it into something else within minutes. I stepped back instinctively, putting some distance between us. Emily's eyes widened in panic, but before the door opened fully, the sound of a phone ringing from the hallway distracted whoever it was. The handle stopped turning. The footsteps faded. Emily exhaled, visibly shaken. "That was close," she muttered, clutching her notebook like it could shield her. I couldn't even respond. My thoughts were still stuck on what she was about to say, what she needed to tell me. But before I could ask again, she looked at me, her expression shifting. "There's something else," she whispered, her voice even lower now. Jordan, he's not just someone I used to date. He's my fiancé. The words landed like a punch. I stared at her, stunned. Wait, what? I couldn't hide the disbelief in my voice. You're engaged. She nodded slowly, eyes filled with guilt. We've been on and off for a year. It's complicated. But lately, with you, things started to feel different. Real. She was tearing up now, and the weight of everything hit me at once. This wasn't just a messy office situation anymore. It was betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak wrapped into one. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. I looked down. It was a text from my manager, "Call me when you're free. Need to talk about the meeting room access logs." My blood ran cold. Access logs? Did someone already know we were in here? Was this already spiraling out of control? Emily's face went pale when she saw the message over my shoulder. "They're tracking that?" she asked, her voice shaking. I nodded slowly, not even sure what to think anymore. Every second in that room now felt like a countdown. Not just to whatever happened between us, but to the moment everything might blow up in our faces. I stared at the message from my manager, heart thudding in my chest. Emily stepped back, visibly shaken, and for a few seconds, neither of us said a word. We both knew this had gone way too far. This wasn't just an after-hours chat anymore, this was something that could cost both of us our reputations, maybe even our jobs. I finally broke the silence. "We need to leave. Now." Emily nodded quickly, gathering her things. We opened the blinds and stepped out of the conference room, trying to act normal, like nothing had happened. The hallway was quiet, but every shadow, every creak of the floor felt louder than it should have. I told her I'd call the manager first, hoping I could somehow get ahead of it. Maybe blame it on a last-minute project discussion. Maybe it would pass. But before I could even hit dial, my manager's office door opened, and there he stood. His expression wasn't angry. It was calm. Too calm. He waved me over. "You two, come inside for a minute." Emily's face turned pale. I felt my palms go cold. We followed him in, sitting down across from his desk. He looked at us for a long moment, then leaned forward. "I don't care what you were doing in that room," he said flatly. "But you need to know, someone reported it." My heart sank. "Reported what?" He slid a printed email across the desk. It was anonymous, but detailed. Exact time. Conference room. Even mentioned the blinds being closed. My stomach twisted. Emily looked like she'd seen a ghost. That's when he dropped the real bomb. The email came from Jordan. I turned to Emily, stunned. She was frozen, lips parted like she couldn't speak. "He has access to your email?" I asked quietly. She slowly nodded. "He used to help manage my work stuff when we were together. I never changed the access." That twist hit harder than anything else. This wasn't just about feelings. Jordan had been watching. Tracking. Maybe waiting. And now, he'd taken the first shot. As we left the office, the weight of everything hit me. The emotional tension. The personal fallout. But the worst part wasn't the scandal. It was realizing someone had been 2 steps ahead of us all along. The ride home that evening felt endless. My mind was running in every direction, what had just happened, what it meant for my job, and what I was going to do next. Emily hadn't said a word since we stepped out of the office. She just stared out the window, lost in thought, her face a mix of regret and disbelief. We both knew things couldn't go back to the way they were. The next day, HR called us in separately. They had already received the report, and while the details were vague enough to avoid serious consequences, we were still given warnings. Just being in that situation was enough to raise questions. Office relationships, especially secret ones, come with baggage, and we had unknowingly walked straight into it. That feeling of getting caught in an emotional mess where personal choices crash into professional boundaries, that's something you don't easily shake off. Emily and I agreed to take some distance. She ended things with Jordan officially, something she said should have happened long before. But the damage from him spying on her and sending that email left a scar she couldn't ignore. She moved to another department within the company to keep things less complicated. We kept it civil, but the closeness we once had faded. Looking back, I realized the biggest lesson was about boundaries, and what happens when you cross them without being fully honest with yourself or the people around you. Office scandals don't always start with something dramatic. Sometimes, they build slowly through silence, looks, and moments left unspoken. And by the time you realize how far you've gone, you're already in too deep. People still whisper now and then. That's just part of the workplace. But eventually, the gossip fades and real life goes on. I learned to be more aware of others, of myself, and of the fine line between personal connection and professional chaos. Not every story ends in disaster, but every one leaves a mark. And sometimes, the real scandal isn't what happened behind closed doors, it's everything that led up to it. 50.